Sunday program. So we're going to start with the Jai Radha Madhava prayers. Let's see. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 A reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text number 1. Some people who come into the Bhagavad Gita classes on Friday nights will have actually heard this verse before, recently, but every time we hear Bhagavad Gita, there's a new light, basically. There's new ways in which you can see it. It's powerful, it's constantly, it's Krishna, it's non-different. So Krishna will throw some other light on the ones that we've been discussing as well. I don't know if anyone wants to follow it. I'm going to read the text, and then I'm going to read some of the purport, and then we're going to have maybe a little discussion, and then go on to the next part of the purport, like that. Just so that so everybody's clear, or that anyone has any questions they'd like to ask about it as well. It just kind of helps the interaction and makes it more interesting as well. But because part of this is about realized knowledge. It's not just theory, it's something which we actually live. Okay, I'll start. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam te kuyatamam Pravaksham Yamasuyave
Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yad Yatva Mokshase Shubhat. Okay, the translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence." Srila Prabhupada's purport. As a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed amongst devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, but it is realized knowledge. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna in the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate this knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the 1st chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the 2nd and 3rd chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are specifically related to devotional service. And because they bring enlightenment to Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed, pure devotion. Therefore it is called the most confidential. One who is situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, and although he is in the material world, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu it is said that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Similarly, we shall find in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pachayani Yashesha Samyavari Paschatani Shivarani. What Krishna is describing here is quite advanced actually, the most confidential knowledge. There's many different ways that people can understand God, and they can try to understand God as well. And a lot of the time it depends on the motivations, you could say, of the person who wants to find out about God. Because there's any amount of people who will tell you on the marketplace who God is, or they will describe God in a certain way. But God is actually one, it's the one personality. So you kind of would ask the question only, yeah, but if that person says God is this way and that person says God is that way, what's the story? How come it seems to be a contradiction? Whereas actually there's no contradiction in the scripture actually, because God is revealing himself in different ways to different people at different times to the degree that they can understand, you know. So there's a qualification as well, and sometimes that qualification might take many lifetimes to come to. There's all different ways in which we can approach God. The normal way is, and is what should be explained here, or you could say the most advanced way is that if we surrender unto God. Now that's a very big word surrender. Everyone knows how to spell surrender, isn't it? But how to actually surrender is not an easy thing. Even the whole fact of surrendering is something which people really find difficulty with.
And even people who agree to the principle that we should surrender to God, they find it not so easy to do either. The main reason for that is that we've been accustomed to living in the material world for a long time, and we are accustomed to be the person who wants others to surrender to him or her. That is a kind of it's a kind of like a disease of the spirit soul, you know, and that we want that particular position that God has. And you notice that at the very beginning here, it said that Krishna says, "Because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential." So that's what the enviousness kind of comes into it. We somehow or other, in our wisdom, want others to surrender to us, you know, but we don't. The idea of surrendering to somebody else is difficult, you know. So that's us in the diseased condition. So therefore, in one sense, God is in a difficult position then, because we're all at different levels of surrender to God, you know. You know, some of us surrender a little bit, some of us, yeah, God's really great, but I want this and I want this and I want that, you know. So we're all at different situations, and Bhagavad Gita is a scientific way in which we can approach God, and Krishna says, and Prabhupada said in the purport, that in the beginning, God gives the understanding that we're not this body. That's the first understanding, that we're the body that we're inhabiting at the moment is not us. So unless we can actually get our head around that, it becomes very difficult then to understand who we are, or to speak of who God is. But if we start to get a handle on that, then the next part of the education is we have to find out we're not the body, so then how do we act based on that knowledge? What should we do? Like, for instance, if trying to get an example here, if somebody is trained as an engineer, so he's going to look for engineering work, isn't it? He's going to look, because that's something that he's kind of used to and wants to do engineering work or whatever. So in this world, we're kind of designated. You know, we have these designations on us: I'm man and woman, and black and white, and Muslim, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Christian. So these kind of designations seem to kind of, you know, absolutely bind us. More designations is I'm a clever person, I've been to university, I've got a PhD, and someone else will think, well, I'm good at carpentry work, I'm good at being a dentist, or whatever it is. You know, so we have these kind of designations on us. So this is the world giving us this designation, but the whole goal of spiritual life is to know that we're not any of those designations either. Then who are we? Who are we, basically? But this is what Krishna is saying. This is why he's given this information to Arjuna. He's saying that you're a servant of the servant of God, and your duty is to understand who God is and to understand how to relate with me, Krishna says. So that's our situation. We're in our present situation because of our previous karma, what we've done previously in previous lifetimes. We're in this situation now, and we might even try to say we are this body. I'm Irish, I'm, you know, such and such an age. But actually, in the next body, it could be anything else based on the karma. You know, you could be in some completely different situation. So who are you? Are you that person, or are you this person, or are you the next person, or the previous person? You know. So this is where spiritual knowledge really comes to the fore. We have to understand that we are the soul, which is a powerful position because it is we're part of God. We have a certain percentage of the potency of God. We're not God, but we have a certain part of that potency. So then, therefore, in spiritual life, we have to act on the basis of that you might call it designation, but it's not a designation. It's the reality of the truth. We have to act as the spirit soul. That is what we're meant to do in spiritual life. We have to find out who we are as a spirit soul, and then find out what our activities are as a spirit soul. And now we're not alone in that, because this is where Krishna comes in, this is where the devotees come in, and this is where the sadhus come in, this is where the guru comes in. And we hear Bhagavad Gita and it says we're not this body. Then we get realization from God what our activities are. You know, Tesham Satata Yukta Bhajatam Priti Bodhakam. In the 10th chapter, Krishna says, I give the knowledge by which you can come to me. And so Krishna is coming in amidst all of this stuff that's going on in Bhagavad Gita like this, and he's saying to us, I'm going to give you by which you can act in your actual position, you know, in your constitutional position. I will give you this knowledge of how you can actually come to me. And so this is why this is called the most confidential knowledge. So the first thing that God does, he tells us that we're not the body, we're the soul. That's what the start of the Bhagavad Gita is about. And then he tells us how to act in Krishna consciousness. Now this is at a particularly advanced stage here. He's telling us that we have to act on the spiritual platform. If we act only on the material platform, there's plenty of knowledge in this material platform. There's psychology, there is science, physics, chemistry. There's tons and tons and tons of knowledge on that level. You know, you just go and find that knowledge. But this type of knowledge, there's no place really that you can find this except from the spiritual position, spiritual situation. And so Krishna is saying, first of all, that we have to be non-envious, you know. So he's giving us the kind of the parameters in which to work in. You know, he's telling us we have to be non-envious, we have to find out how to be non-envious. And then, as I said earlier, and you'll see the most confidential knowledge is that we surrender to Krishna. Because the whole, if I've asked tons and tons of people, I stop a lot of people on the street and I say to them, you know, what is the goal of this? Oh, I've read Bhagavad Gita, I read Bhagavad Gita, and I say, what's the goal of Bhagavad Gita? What's it about? They don't really know. The best ones they do is they say, oh, it's the Dharma, perform your Dharma. Now that's true. That's true. But Krishna says at the very end, Sarva Dharma Parityaja, all Dharma, just give up all that Dharma and just surrender unto me. And I will protect you from all sinful action, in other words, from all your karma, do not fear. So we're guaranteed that all the previous activities, all the things that we have done, which has not been conducive to our spiritual development, we have stored it. It's all very, very much in a part of our consciousness called the chitta, where it's all stored in a very, very subtle element. And he's saying to us that if you perform devotional service, I will dissolve all of that. You know, all of those things that we've done previously, where we would have to come back as another body to actually live them out. He's saying, I will dissolve all of that for you, you know, but just surrender unto me. So it's very incumbent on us then to learn how to surrender. So this is the most confidential knowledge, and Krishna says at the very end of this chapter what surrender is. So I'm going to ask, with anybody looking at the page, what does Krishna recommend as surrender? Can anyone tell me that? What? Yeah.
What question?
The question is, how does Krishna recommend that we surrender? He says to surrender, but what does that look like? What does surrender look like to us?
You're already there.
Pretty good, yeah. That's very that's. Sometimes that's kind of the kind of a negative side, but it's essential. But sometimes it's very difficult for us to do that. I mean, I have a friend of mine who actually took him so long to give up smoking, right? And eventually he went to a psychologist. This is 10, 15 years smoking. He went to a psychologist, and then eventually he went into a trance with this guy's hypnosis, and he was able to do it eventually. I'm not promoting hypnosis here, but I'm just saying that to give up something is difficult. But there's Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in a certain place, there's an easier way to give up things, to give up desires. You're right, material desire, give up. What is the easier way? Anybody know?
Think of Krishna all
Yeah, yes. That's again number one in the classes ever. And it's 9:34. That's what it says. But the way to give up the desires is to experience a higher taste. When you experience something higher, you're not interested in the lower. You know, you just and that is that's in which the crux of which spiritual life is based on. You know, is by experiencing a higher taste, you're giving up the lower. But and this is a kind of a little warning to everybody. That is easier said than done. You know, because we are tatasta, we are marginal. So we're still somewhere in between. We still have a desire for the lower taste, and we haven't yet developed a desire for the higher taste. So that is, as I said, it's easier said than done. So if we haven't got to, I'm asking all these questions now, but it's sparking questions like what you said there. If we haven't got the desire for the higher taste, and we don't have that desire, right? We don't have the desire yet for the higher taste. We still have a desire for the lower taste. How can we practice spiritual life? Be with devotees. That is a powerful answer, because devotees, they are doing that. They have that desire already. So therefore, if you associate with people who have the desire, you get the desire. And what is the opposite of that?
The opposite of this desire, not to be with no.
You don't associate with non-devotees, because non-devotees, they have lower desires. They want to eat, drink, and be merry, and tomorrow we'll be dead. That's the philosophy. So if you mix with people like that, you will subtly take on that desire. Now, most of us are living in the world, so therefore we're going to be mixing with people like that. But the thing is that we don't take the association of people like that. We're with them and we're very polite, and you know it's fine. But we don't take their association, but we gradually give a little bit of association if they're interested. You know, that's a way in which you can be, you know, carefully, properly located to be able to live in the world. So we're just back to that situation again. We still have lower desires. We're trying to develop higher desires. So we associate with those who have higher desires. That brings us into that situation, in a better situation. And then back to the answer that Shani gave is the number 34 in this, and this is very important when we can listen to this, because it's the only verse that was repeated twice in the Bhagavad Gita, 9:34 and 9:65. It says, Manmana bhavavat bhakto majaji mam namaskaru mamasraisi yuktaino atmana parayana. It says, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So it's simple in one sense. But it's simple, but it's not simple as well. Why is it not simple again? What's the reason? We have desires for not the higher things, not the we desire to be worshipped. Actually, we desire that position of Krishna. So Krishna is going to give us that information. Because you're not envious of me, I will give you this information. So that is where we have to try to get to be non-envious of Krishna. So that means that the material ego is what's keeping us here. And you know what the material ego? It manifests in thinking that I'm the best. I'm the best. I'm the best. None of us will admit that. No, it's not me. Surely not me. But there's a subtle thing going on in all of us that is also not bad, because it keeps us surviving. It keeps the heart ticking. It keeps the brain functioning. It keeps the ears hearing. Because we're not doing any of that. You know, but there's a certain part of the ego which is helping us do that. But the false ego wants everybody to worship me, like that I want to be the center. So spiritual life is involved in developing how to act in this world, so that we're not thinking we're in the center, but that God is in the center. and have Krishna as in the center. And actually doing that, not just giving lip service to it and says, yes, I believe in God, and then killing animals or something like that, you know. And using that as a bit of a gross example there, but there's a reason for that. But, you know, not to have that as you know, not just to give lip service to God, because that's one of the worst things that's going on in the world today. Because the little chance that people have to try to surrender to God and to find out God, you got some maniacs going around trying to push God down their throats, or trying to tell them that, yeah, you have to believe, if you don't, you'll go to hell, you know, and they're trying to scare people. But whereas the only way in which we can actually surrender to God is by ourselves, willingly, because we want, because we love God. That's how we do it. That's how it can be done. That is, I'm particularly making that point. It's a little bit off skew or off kilter or off point, but it's Prophet says it so often in these purports that, you know, spiritual life is like a razor's edge, you know, and that if we make a slight slip, we can get cut, you know. And it's not an easy job. Like, you have people going to college and they're spending 5, 10 years in college trying to be expert at something, right? Or to become a specialist at something. You spend 15 years at that, and that's a material thing. To become expert at understanding God. You know, everybody seems to, oh yeah, I know who God is. Oh yeah, God's like this. Oh, I don't believe in God. Oh, you know, as if they can know just like that. You do have to take the time, you know, and you have to find the teachers, and you have to learn how to become submissive. So it's like a razor's edge in that sense. So I'm saying that the prize, God is there. He's wanting us. He's doing everything in His power to bring us here. There's Lord Chaitanya up there. He's got His arms open. He says, "Come, please come here. You know, become a devotee. Surrender to me." He doesn't even ask you to surrender. He just says, "Chant Hare Krishna. Chant the names of God. That will purify you." So He's making it as easy and as easy as He can. But it becomes, you know, it's. We still have to be very careful, you know. We have to be forensic, you know. We have to be like forensic scientists or spiritual doctors, you know. We have to learn how to do this in the association of devotees. And also another thing which is very important in the association of devotees is we have to encourage each other as well. Because along with the ego, or the false ego, comes, I'm no good. You know, on one level we think we're the best, on another level we're thinking, oh, I'm no good, I never made it, I should have been like this, and I was never like this. And, you know, there's a kind of self-sabotage that goes on as well, which unfortunately, especially in Kali Yuga, you know, it's a very, very negative place. There's so much very negative energy there that's dragging us, like talking about association. Bad place to get associated with Kali Yuga, but tough luck, guys, you all came here. It was your choice. That wasn't a good choice then. But you're making a good choice to be here and to discuss Bhagavad Gita among ourselves and to listen very carefully to what Krishna is saying. Because like it's very subtle. The science is subtle. Because the soul, we cannot see the soul. We can see the body. We can kind of check, we can know the mind is there because we're all making decisions. And we can see the intelligence is there because, you know, we're staying on the right side of the road. We're not, you know, running out in front of a car or something like that. There's intelligence there. We know how to survive. But then beyond that, then is spiritual intelligence, and there's the intelligence of the soul, and that has to be told to us by Krishna. That's kind of revealed. You know, that comes to us from Krishna. That knowledge is descending. It's aporashaya, because the other knowledge that we have is of the material world. We know these different things in the material world. But we don't have the real knowledge of the spiritual world. But the spiritual world then is descended to us, and Krishna gives that to us. And we hear that through the scripture. You know, the scripture is giving us information of what it's like. And that's the most beautiful thing that we can imagine. And especially in Krishna consciousness. because the Krishna consciousness gives us the whole aspect of how beautiful God is. Lord Chaitanya is the most beautiful. That's how he made such an impression. And that's why today the Krishna consciousness is being spread all over the world. Because of the beauty, the beauty of Lord Chaitanya. So beauty is truth, truth is beauty. That one famous English poet said that. So this very powerful manifestation of Godhood has come specifically for Kali Yuga and is asking us to chant, to continuously chant. I don't know if anyone was here chanting, Abba Girish is chanting, then we did some more chanting afterwards. There's a power in that chanting. It's there's nothing that actually can explain it almost. It's Krishna manifesting in sound. It's the easiest way in this world to go back to the spiritual world. But we often need, along with that, kind of a little bit more information, explanation about which is where the philosophy comes in. And so therefore the sound when we chant, it's even more powerful, when we know what we're doing. And that's where the beauty of Krishna comes in, because that is what is revealed in the scriptures. This Srimad Bhagavatam, which we had discussed this morning, we were discussing from the first canto, but the first 9 cantos explain about all the different incarnations of God, and especially in the third chapter of the first canto explains all the different incarnations, Valamadev, Sringadev, so Lord Ramachandra, all the different incarnations of God. Now, all of those incarnations have all got the power of God, but they exhibit a certain of the potencies at a specific time. It's still God, It's not that it's not God. It's God all those incarnations, but they're exhibiting a certain amount of that. But then we have to be prepared, though, for when God appears in the 10th canto, which is Krishna, because God is expanding all his potencies. Is beauty, knowledge, renunciation, fame, wisdom, and wealth. Yes, opulence. So he's appearing in that way at that time to 100%. So that's a big thing for us to understand. And especially when you consider that most people think God is some guy in the sky who gives these really heavy instructions that everyone has to follow, and if they don't, they'll go to hell. That's a kind of an explanation that's often given. And so therefore, when you tell them about the potency and the power of God, they look, is he like me? Well, what do you mean he's like this? So the information that we have in the Krishna consciousness movement is very, it's the most intimate knowledge of who God is. And he's not going to tell that to everybody. You have to become qualified to understand it. So that's why we have to study the 9 cantos of Bhagavatam before we can really understand the 10th canto. I mean, you can go and buy it down the street, or if you're in Vrindavan, you can go down to the store and you can buy, this is Krishna, and you can read, oh, Krishna's a little baby, oh, he had this, he had that. And, and you can think, oh, I know God, oh yeah, Krishna's like that. But that's not what it is. That's not what it is. I can give you 100% guarantee. All my spiritual teachers, are really making this point 100%. You have to be, this is called the difference between jnana and vijnana. Vijnana means realized knowledge. So this is the knowledge that God gives. Jnana we can do by ourselves. We can kind of say, oh, this is like this and this like this. Okay, that must be like that then. But vijnana is descending aporoshaya. It's coming from the spiritual world. So Krishna appears to give this very high knowledge to us. And this is his mercy, because he says that one who can understand the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not take birth in this material world again. So Krishna has given us the passport to get out of this place. He's given us the information how to leave. It's this passport for the spiritual world. It's the visa for the spiritual world. God, is to understand this knowledge. So this is why Bhagavad Gita, this is called the most confidential knowledge, and it's a taste of it. Krishna's giving a taste of it, and that's what Bhagavad Gita is. Krishna is just saying, he's bringing us along, giving us this information. It's all totally in there, at the same time. It's all in the Bhagavad Gita, but it's urging us to learn more. You know, just surrender unto me. What does that mean? It means we engage our mind always in thinking of Krishna, become his devotee, and render service. And this is the power. This is the power actually. This service. If we can render service to God, that's what's going to really get us places actually. And this whole thing this is what bhakti is about. Jnana, karma, ashtanga, all of these, we want something. But bhakti is where we want to give something to God. You know, that's the difference. We want to give to God. We realize, this is God. I'm in relationship. I have to do something for God. You know, I want to love God. I no longer want something for myself. You know, I want to give to God. And then what happens then is then God starts to give to us, and God enters into a relationship with us. And then we really understand who we are. We are totally satisfied. Before we're trying to become satisfied by getting something. But when we perform bhakti yoga, we get something, and then we want to give something to God. You know, and that's how we really understand who we are and what the potency of the living entity is, who we actually are by performing service. Like we start the service by chanting. You know, we do this chanting. We finish the service by chanting as well. And so that's one part of the service. Everybody's been doing that here. But then again, we've all got different occupations. We're in this world. We're trying to do different things. We have to make a living. We're here. So what do we do then? But this is what we do. We actually learn how to meditate on God. You know, even while we're doing the particular occupation we're suited to. And the idea is don't do anything too extraneous. Just do something which is your natural propensity. Doesn't matter what it is. Whether you're cleaning the street or whether you're an astrophysicist or whatever. It doesn't matter. But if you're doing it for God, that's what matters. That's because he's only seeing that. He doesn't need any astrophysicists. The whole world, he's controlling all the planetary systems. He doesn't need anyone else. So, but we whatever we have a natural propensity for, we do that as service to God, and that way we're thinking of God. Okay, back to Krishna consciousness movement. Everyone is encouraged to get up early and chant in the morning time, and to give a certain amount of time to this chanting. This is one thing to do, because what we're doing is we're calling on God. Oh God, oh energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service today. You know, we do it all the time. We want it for all the time, but we may only do it for today, at least because we're usually in the now. Please help me in my day. And it's guaranteed in the Krishna consciousness movement. If we can do that for 2 hours with concentration, you know, then whatever we do for the rest of the day is devotional service. We're guaranteed that if we can concentrate and do it properly during those 2 hours. That's a concession that was given to us by the acharyas. It's just a concession that if we concentrate on God and realize our position as the servants and call on God to help me, help! We really need to call deeply, because we are stuck in this place. You know, we're very badly stuck. We don't really realize until we start cleaning that we see how much we're in there. You know, you ever notice that when you start cleaning something? Oh, there's something else. Oh, there's something else. Oh my God, look at that cobweb. You know, when we start cleaning, we actually see how deeply, you know, we're ensnared. So, and that is where the cry from the heart comes. And that's when God knows we're serious. He doesn't know we're serious if we, okay, there, God, here's 100,000 pounds for your temple. You know, okay, that's also okay. I'm not saying it's not good, but I'm saying that he knows it when he hears that cry from the heart. You know, when that cry is there, that's how he knows. It's like and we can only be satisfied when that cry is reciprocated by God. You know, we will become happy in that situation. Because this has been my experience, having practiced it for 42 years. I'm almost as bad a guy as I was when I started, you know. But because I had the determination still to keep on crying no matter what, then I find that Krishna reciprocates with me. So we have to always be brave about spiritual life. We have to forget all the things that are saying, oh no, you can't do this. Oh, no. You just have to go and call out to God. And God is there. You know, God, and it's only, and each time it's almost like from minute to minute, you know, our doubts will come, you know, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not good, or I can't. Almost from minute to minute is there. So that's why we constantly chant. We chant almost 24 hours a day, because the place is a mess. Kali Yuga is a complete hellhole. You know, it's a difficult place. But if we hear about Krishna and we associate with devotees, if we come to this is the bliss. This is what Lord Chaitanya did. He just went into the streets and he blasted out this love of Godhead everywhere, and people were just, oh, this is God. I can see it's God. You know. So we have to do the same thing, because this is one other thing which we need to do. We need to try to give Krishna to others. The little bit that we have ourselves, we need to try to give that to everybody else, because that's what God wants. That's the main service that we can do down here. We can do our occupational service. This is good. We can, you know, whatever, think about God, but on top of that, we try to give it to others, and that's where we get empowerment from God. God will empower us to do amazing things. You know, we will understand the Shastra more. We will study the Shastra more. We will get strength. Shastra is like Astra, means weapon. So it's a weapon to against an illusion. Is the, like Krishna says, armed with yoga, stand and fight. Slash with the weapon of knowledge, the darkness born of ignorance. Armed with yoga, Arjuna, stand and fight. So it's a serious message. You know, it's not an armchair philosophy. To really experience Krishna consciousness, we have to get up out of the seat, you know, get up off the backside, and go out and try to give Krishna consciousness to the world. Because it's a hard thing to do, and most of us can't do it. Most of us don't want to do it. But I can guarantee you, 100%, once you start doing that, Krishna's going to reciprocate. You will get real peace. You'll get real happiness, because that's the bliss of reciprocating, of doing service to God. You know, that's where real bliss happens. Okay, I've been pontificating there for the last while, and the tendency is when you get on a seat to start, you know, telling everybody what to do. But the most important thing, though, for all of us is to do it ourselves. You know, is to examine ourselves. You know, and that's why I'm also doing that all the time, as much as I can, as much as I'm able to do. Is there any comments anyone would like to, or any question? There you are, number one in the class. Yes.
I have a question. How to get the spirit of surrender?
Get the spirit of surrender. Yes. How to get the spirit of surrender? How do we get that spirit of surrender? Well, Krishna says there at the end, it says, engage your mind always in thinking of me. And you were always at these programs, I noticed. And you're always asking questions. This is how, you know, that you're doing exactly the right thing. You know, you're engaging your mind, your activities in thinking of Krishna. So that's number one. That's a really good one. The next one is become my devotee. Are you doing that? See, she's humble. She's not even saying, but she is. You are doing it. And offer obeisances to me and worship me. These are the ways. Being completely absorbed in me. Surely you will come to me. I noticed that when we're in the association with devotees, that we become more absorbed. I know I was looking at something else before I came in, and I came into the association here. Abai was chanting, and you know, and then the devotees playing the violin, and the devotees playing the drum. It was really, really beautiful, you know. And so that helped me absorb my mind. So in that way, in the association of devotees, we can absorb ourselves more in Krishna. So that's how we develop that spirit of surrender. And something else came to mind there, and it's a little thing. I don't know it's important. It's an important point actually, and it's important to know. It's like to know what the goal is, what we're aiming for. This whole idea, Krishna says, surrender unto me. There are different stages in bhakti. It starts with a little faith, association with devotees, hearing the scriptures, following rules and regulations, getting rid of unwanted things, and nishta, which is strong faith. But I went through that quite quickly. But after that, the next stage in bhakti is called raganuga, or it's called spontaneous devotion. And at that stage, we won't worry so much. It will be something like, it will be spontaneous happening. We won't need to force ourselves. Like at the moment, we need to force our mind, oh my God, I have to get up, oh I've got to chant, oh no, and chant, you know. It's kind of, it's difficult for us, you know. And that's called sadhana bhakti. It's bhakti, it's not like a mango, you know, mango is green and big, but then eventually it turns into a beautiful reddish color, yellowish, you know, beautiful. So it's like that. So our devotion is like that. It's like it takes a while for it to develop, but eventually it starts to grow and becomes a plant and so on. So in the same way, sadhana bhakti is like that. So we're performing sadhana bhakti. So we chant Hare Krishna, follow the rules, regulations. We try to, you know, associate with devotees. We live in a holy place and we study the scripture. These are different things that we do, so that for us to practically surrender. But then in the midst of all of that, we can get some little taste of raganuga as well, you know. We can get a taste of what it is like to be on the spiritual platform, you know. We can, at some point in our I think we've all experienced that. Would you say, Praveen, you've experienced that? You know, there's sometimes when you feel, wow, yes, this is it, you know, and you're dancing in ecstasy or whatever, you know. This is spontaneous. And someone says, so what are you doing there? Leave me alone, I'm just dancing, I'm bliss, you know, it's wonderful. It's something that so we get a taste of that in the early stages in the sadhana bhakti. And that taste is enough. Is there any great scholars among us? Can anyone give us an example of sages from the Bhagavatam who got a taste of spiritual life? I'm talking about the first, second, third cantos here. And in that time when they got a taste of God consciousness, it was enough to do them for the rest of their life. Can anyone think of anyone? Who?
Ravan's grandfather.
Ravan's grandfather.
Yeah.
Okay, he got a taste, did he?
Yeah.
What was it like?
He was the son of Brahma. So
Son of Brahma, yeah.
he was the first one to gain the liberation, I would say.
Okay.
And then he was the person who made Ravan go to Brahma because he got his teaching from Brahma, right? So so I think he was the one of the ones. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll park that as an example. It's not one that I know of in the okay. Yeah.
Swami Vivekananda.
Swami Vivekananda, not necessarily. There is the philosophy that he has propounded of helping people, which is very laudable. But the spiritual, you know, and understanding God's actual nature and describing God, that's another aspect which is, anyway, not necessarily, should I say, but we could talk about that later as well. Another answer over here, from our top in the class. Narada Muni. That is one of the examples that he got as when he was serving the sages. When he was all the sages, it was Chaturmasya, and they came there, and Narada started to serve all these sages. Right? He was the son of a maidservant. You know, it was like it's considered to be not the highest kind of social position. But this shows you that bhakti doesn't care about any of those things. And so by serving the great sages, he asked them, could he take a remnant of their food stuff, just some remnants of their food stuff. And once he tasted that remnant, again, association of devotees, he got the taste, the higher spiritual taste. And then ultimately, when he left, his mother died, and then he wandered about the world, and then at the point of death, he went to the spiritual, the next dimension, and became Narada Muni, basically. So that's a person who got that taste. Okay, I'm trying to, let me ask some, any other examples from the Bible too?
Arjuna.
Ajamil, yes, Ajamil is an amazing character because Ajamil was a Brahmin, he was very, very strict and so on. But at one point in his life, he was distracted when he saw a couple embracing in a very, very alluring way, shall we say. But of course in Kali Yuga, that's everywhere. You go on the street, you look and see it all the time. But he lost all his, he lost everything of his pious credits that he had, and he became a complete debauch. He married a prostitute, he became completely, he robbed, he stole, he killed. And just at the particular point of death, he was about to, but he did one good thing in his life afterwards, and that was he called his son Narayan. And so at the very end, he called out Narayan, and just at that point, the Yamadutas were coming to take him away, basically, and to give him the result of his activities. But the Vishnudutas came and said, "No, stop! He's a pious person. You cannot touch him." He's not, how is he pious? He's after you look at all the stuff. I've got this list of stuff that he did, and now during this time, this is the point. Ajamil was conscious. He was about to leave, and he saw this discussion that was going on between the Yamadutas and the Vishnudutas. So he realized the Vishnudutas then basically they completely convinced the Yamadutas that no, this is not your land, this is our land, because he called the name of God. So what we were saying earlier about Lord Chaitanya, chanting Hare Krishna is the most important thing. But he called the name of God at the point of death, and the Vishnus came and they saved him. Now the Yamadutas had to go to Yamaraj and check out what's this, what happened, where this is our service. And then he said, no, you can't do this. He's called the name of God. Anyone who calls the name of God will be saved. So just by that once calling on the name of God, he didn't leave his body that time, but then became a great devotee, and he went back to the spiritual world. Any other examples? Who? Arjuna. Kind of. Not exactly the example I'm looking for.
Sorry, Prabhu, I came a bit late. What was the original question?
Yeah, the question is, in another sense, Prahlad Maharaj, the question is that some person, that this potency, this Krishna consciousness or this God consciousness is so powerful that even a little taste of it during the lifetime is enough to suffice for the rest of your life. Now Prahlad Maharaj, he got it another way. He got it that his mum was Krita, what was his name? His mother's name was Hiranyakashipu's wife, and Hiranyakashipu's wife was pregnant, and Hiranyakashipu was away meditating, and he was thinking of all, how to become powerful, the great Lord of the universe. He was completely absorbed in trying to perform austerity so that he could take over the world, But in the meantime, his wife was pregnant, and she was on her own in the ashram. And along came all the demigods and said, like father, like son, we're not going to let this person become, get anywhere further. Let's kill this person so that we don't have another demon. It's bad enough in Hiranyakashipu, we want his son as well. So, but Narada came, of course the other person, Narada came and gave great resource and started to say, no, do not. This is going to be a great devotee of the Lord. And so what Narada did is then he preached the whole Srimad Bhagavatam to him in the womb, and that devotee became Prahlad Maharaj. So just by that preaching of and Prahlad, let's read the 7th canto. What a devotee Prahlad is. Unbelievable. No comparison. Prahlad is just out of this world. I have one hand here and one hand here. First of all, top of the class, what is it? Who? Gajendra is another one. Gajendra is very, very good. And what was your one?
I was about to say the same.
Gajendra! Oh, amazing. Yeah, Gajendra was given a mantra in his previous lifetime as King Indra Jamna, I think it was. He was given this mantra. But because of some reason, he took the body of an elephant in his next life. And he became, although he was elephant, he was the king of the elephants, and he was, he's an incredibly powerful living entity. But of course, he had that fight with the crocodile, and the crocodile grabbed his leg, and he thought, well, I'd be able to get rid of this crocodile easy, but he wasn't. Crocodile, and there's all the symbolism of the crocodile, so I won't get into that now. But the crocodile was kept him under the water or kept him entangled for 100 years, and that's 100 years of the demigods. Eventually, surrender. Do you remember we talked about surrender, that cry? In the jungle, finally saw, Kajendra finally understood what the situation was, and he cried out to Krishna. He somehow with his trunk he grabbed the flower and he offered it, and immediately Krishna came, and then cut off the head of the crocodile, who also was a demigod actually, and then brought him back. So just by that mantra, he was saved. One other example. Maharaj. That's funny. That was the one I thought most of all, because Dhruva was the one who he was, he was in the forest, and he just wanted a kingdom greater than his father, Lord Brahma, because he'd been kicked off his father's lap. He wasn't the favorite son, and he went to his mother and he said, "Well, why can't I be the next ruler? It's this is terrible." Because he was a Kshatriya, he wanted to have a kingdom, and he was told by his stepmother that no, you are not born of my womb, so you cannot be the next king. So he went to his mother, and she said, "Well, that's true, and I'm not the favorite queen, but if you have a problem, just go to Lord Vishnu, and you will find out, because I was told that sages who go to the forest will be looked after if they do that." So what he did was he went to the forest, and he actually started to, and on his way he met Narada actually. And Narada said, "So what's the problem? What's happening? You're only a 5-year-old boy. What are you doing in the forest?" He says, "No, I was told to go and see Lord Vishnu." And he says, "Oh, you don't have to go to the forest. Just meditate on Lord Vishnu." He says, "No, I can't do this. I need to go to the forest basically to meditate on Lord Vishnu." But he says, "You can't meditate on Vishnu. Just go home and be a good boy, and everything will be fine." But he was so determined. He went, and then when he went to the forest, he meditated on Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu came, and then he realized who God is. And what was the thing he realized in the forest when he saw Lord Vishnu? What did he realize? Anybody tell me? That Vishnu was better than? Nothing is better than Krishna, especially because he went there because he wanted a kingdom greater than Lord Brahma, his grandfather. That's what he wanted. But when he got Krishna, he could see, oh no, why did I want that? This is good, this is Krishna. So, but then Krishna, Lord Vishnu said to him, "During this lifetime, you will not see me again. But in the meantime, you should just go back," and he gave him all these boons. You were going to rule for 27,000 years, and therefore you will be a great devotee, and then you will come to me. So this is the instruction from Krishna. So he got that little glimpse. So this is what I'm saying. Spiritual life is like that. You can get a glimpse. Parikshit Maharaj. Wow, yeah, he saw Krishna in just when he was going to be destroyed by the weapon of Ashwatthama. And Ashwatthama is another story. But anyway, yeah. Oh, I got another hand. Oh. Radha Kunling. Wow, yeah, this is getting really serious. Yeah. Bali Maharaj. Yes, because when he saw Lord Vatmanadev in reality, he surrendered everything. Yeah. Vritrasura, yeah. He was Chitraleku, and he committed the offense, but he was a great devotee. And he had the experience of being a devotee, and then even when he was in the body of a demon, he was a great devotee. Sheshanaga. We're going into the Vishnu Tattva there. So not Sheshanaga in that sense, he's an expansion. But the others are all in the category of Jiva Tattva, like in that sense. That's why we can relate more with the Jiva Tattva, not so much the Vishnu Tattva.
Namdev.
Namdev. No, I'm not aware of non-date now. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we could discuss it, yeah. So, but really to bring it back from the lofty heights of these wonderful devotees. Now, they're all there as examples. That's what the Bhagavatam was about. And this is the glory of the Vedic scriptures, because they give us these incredible examples by which we can actually aspire to. You know, we can learn so much from all of these different. Another one.
Yeah, I'm not able to recollect the name, but there was this king who was basically the ancestor of Lord Ramchandra, and he helped Devtas in their war. And in the last 2 minutes of his life, he just remembered Lord Ram. And
It's not Rati Dev, it's King Katfanga. King Katfanga. The last minute he remembered God and he went there. But just again, just to come back to that point of us, you know, the examples are there. As I described at the beginning of the class, we are somewhat in the Tatastha Shakti, you know, we're, you know, it's not always we're on, sometimes we're struggling, isn't it? Hands up people here who struggle in spiritual life? Anybody? No? So only a few people struggle? I think we all kind of struggle, if we're honest. We do struggle. But we get these examples from these great sages, you know. I won't ask the. Do you know that verse? Tat tat. Yad yada charati shrestas. Haribo.
Jagay Maday.
Jagaya Mata.
Technology from Nityan Mam.
This is a very important example actually, and one is the one that is probably the most relevant for us because it's only 400 or 500 years ago, and this will be the last comment I'll make, and it's a very fitting comment additionally, because we're going to have Arti next. And Jagat Madai, they were the most, they were the worst. You know, we have the examples out in Dublin streets of the real heavy guys, heavy dudes. You know, there's so many examples of them, and but these were worse. Were 10 times, a million times worse. And one of the things that Lord Chaitanya said to both Haridas Thakur and Advaitacharya, they were the seniors. They were the seniors, and to Lord Nityananda, who is Vishnu Thakur. They were told to go out and tell people to chant Hare Krishna. Now, this comes back to what I was saying. If you want to make the most advancement, tell others to chant Hare Krishna. Seriously, guys, this is what will make the most advancement. If you go and tell others, you will make most advancement. Now, you learn it yourself, but you'll also, if you're telling others, because that's what Lord Chaitanya told the Haridas Thakur, who was his great devotee, to Advaitacharya, and to Lord Nityananda. They went and were telling everybody. They were going and, just chant the name of God. So Lord Nityananda, he approached. I think Haridas Thakur went as well, but when he saw him, he just got this man, what is he doing? But he approached Jagai and Mary, the worst people, and he told them, just chant the name of Hari. And he got this weapon, and he smashed his head with it, you know. And Lord Nityananda was bleeding profusely. And Lord Chaitanya, who's God himself, came, and immediately the Sudarshan Chakra came to his hand, and was about to demolish these two guys. And then Nityananda again stopped him and said, no, this is not for this age. This is not what we're meant to do. We're meant to, these people, if you were to kill one of them, you've got to kill all of them. Because we're all from Kali Yuga. You know? So we can identify with that. So the message for this age is compassion, is to chant Hare Krishna. You know. So that was the message that Lord Chaitanya had said. So if anybody sees any messages on our tree, what's up, please come out on Saturday and chant Hare Krishna on this tree. You know. That's what that one's about, you know. That we now maybe I meant to say this just before I go. There's many ways of preaching nowadays. We have the internet. There's so much ways we can preach on the internet. There's so much nonsense on the internet, but there's so much ways. our good devotee Krishna Abhishek Prabhu, I made a little thing on the Bhagavad Gita recently, and he put all this background information about the class. In that way, we should flood the internet with the messages of Godhead, with chanting Hare Krishna. We should use every opportunity we have just to do that. So that's also preaching, that's telling people about Krishna. In fact, it's probably the way that most people will hear about Krishna. So don't be lazy in that. Use your time to spread out the messages of Krishna that way. It's very, very powerful method, and so many people are taking heed these days. So this is the way in which we can make the most advancement. So Jagai and Madhe, they basically, they were about to be killed by Lord Chaitanya, but Lord Nityananda saved them. And then they changed. When they saw Lord Nityananda, they immediately changed. They had a turn of heart. They had the experience of God, and then afterwards they became the greatest devotees. They became the greatest devotees ever. So there's hope for us all. So I'll just conclude there, but I'll have to have the person in the class there has got one more last comment. Yeah. Pardon? Nalakuvera Manigriva. Yeah, that's another example. Okay, so that's it. And that's a perfect example because now we're about to start in the month of Kartik. So today, it says in the calendar about lighting the lamps today, but it's officially starting tomorrow, isn't it?
8th of October.
8th of October. Oh, it's 8 for us. Yeah, okay. So tomorrow we can start lighting the lamps, and then after that we sing the
What is the date today?
Tuesday. What?
Tuesday, day after tomorrow we start.
Day after tomorrow we start. Okay. And so it's yeah. Oh, we have every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Oh, what time?
6 to 7.
6 to 7. Okay. So please, this is a most special month. It's the most powerful month that you can make so much advancement in this month. It's a special month for all of us to make advancement. So if you're lighting this lamp to Krishna, it's like you're asking Krishna to light up the light of knowledge in your heart, and you're offering that back to God. So this is a special month. All of us can make a special vow, chant more if you can, do some extra austerity. It's all very important, and then we can make the most advancement. Hare Krishna. So now the next part of the program is we're going to Bhagavad Jai. I love this part of the program. It's become a real art, it's like, it's probably the most entertaining one.
Thank you. And my sister has the 2 books there. I'll go on the other side. It's okay, I'll go on the other side. Yeah, I'll go there. Hare Krishna. Can you all hear me? After the lecture on Sunday, I present 2 Bhagavad Gita. I asked 2 questions, and the winner of each of the questions will get a Bhagavad Gita. But the answer has to be entirely correct. And my friend here is the first question. How many of you practice Ekadashi? Ekadashi. How many of you practice? There are 4 ways. You can fast totally, you can drink water, you can have water and fruit, or you can take Ekadashi prasad. So you can choose whichever. It depends on, of course, it depends on your age and all that. Okay? So, what is the criteria for Ekadashi?
Criteria for what?
What does it relate, or what is the criteria for Ekadashi? Can you expand on it? Can you expand on it?
Depends on your dosha.
Sorry? Speak up.
On your dosha and on your house, whatever you want.
It's not the answer I'm looking for, but there are two answers to that question. Read both of them, read.
How do you observe it, Mataji? Is that the question?
Yeah, can you say more about it in two simple sentences?
How do you observe Ekadashi?
How does it help?
What is the meaning of Ekadashi?
In what way?
Two sentences.
Yes.
No grains at all.
You don't take
any
grain?
grains.
Yeah, that we know.
Nirjala.
No, I'm not getting the answer yes.
More and more chanting.
Okay, I'll give it to you. You've just done, I mean, last 15 days, 14 days ago. Now you're coming to the next one. Now, that is a clue. Sorry? Sorry?
One side only will
It depends on the lunar cycle.
No, not that. No. Sakadasi is referred to as the mother of bhakti. Mother of bhakti. That time, during Ekadasi, we do 25 rounds. You can do more rounds. So it means it helps us to advance further than in the ordinary days. That's number one. Number two, it makes you reflect. The 14 days have passed by, so that when you come to this Ekadasi, you have to correct yourself and do the right thing. That is the answer I'm looking for. But I don't know.
No one is qualified.
I don't think anybody gave the answer. So that is what it is. That is what basically.
You will give Bhagavad Gita to yourself.
No, maybe I
Ask another question.
none of them got the answer. I will ask another simple question. Okay? In Tetra Yuga, how many thousand years are there in Tetra Yuga?
Treta Yuga.
Treta Yuga. How many thousand years are there in Treta Yuga? And how do you arrive at that figure? If you can do that, then you have the answer. Anybody knows?
Shani, you don't know?
You don't know? Anybody here? Yes? Sorry?
864,000.
No, that is not, that's what Dwapara Yuga. We are talking about Treta Yuga.
16,000 is saying. 16,000.
No.
12 lakh.
Nobody knows it. I'm really, I can't believe that not anybody can.
You give them hint, Prabhu.
Huh?
There is 432,000 years.
Yes.
Multiplied by 3.
If you take 432,000 years, which is Kali Yuga, so Dwapara you multiply by 2, for Treta Yuga you multiply by 3, and for Satya Yuga you multiply by 4, and you got the answer. So what is the answer?
12,96,000.
Krishna Mataji got it.
Yeah. One more question. This is, I hope it's not going to be too difficult. If you take a sloka, some have 2 lines, but those are the 2 lines, they have a comma in the first line and another comma. But therefore they're literally 4 lines. Right? It's understood. It's called understood. Can anybody explain about the first 2 lines and the second 2 lines? I'm taking the one with 4 lines. Can anybody explain the first 2 lines against the second 2 lines? In fact, I wish I knew that long time ago myself. It's very, very useful. It's so useful that I only realized late how useful it was. See if you can guess the first 2 lines against the second 2 lines. What does the first 2 lines convey, the message? And then The second two lines, what message does that convey? Okay, I'll give it to you. If you in the English language class, were asked to write a story, so what is the basic thing? Three things. What is the basic thing you have to know?
Introduction, main body, and conclusion.
Very good.
That's the main thing in the English.
That's very, very good. Based on that, now connect that with the first two lines against the second two lines. Connect that using that point and that information.
So maybe the first two lines of the shloka would mean the introduction, and the last two would mean the conclusion. Maybe, I'm not sure.
No, introduction, body, and conclusion.
Yeah.
You don't have fully right. Anybody can give a fuller answer than that. You're in the right direction. So anybody else can say something more about it. If I knew that when I first came here in 2006, I wish I had it. I would have increased my knowledge with regards to the slokas in Bhagavad Gita. We're talking about Bhagavad Gita for the moment. Does anybody know? No?
Easier question.
Nobody knows? Take a guess.
Easier
You've
question.
been given a clue by Mataji. So using that information. No, okay, I'm going to explain that. The first two lines is the introduction, which he said, and based on the introduction and using the knowledge of the word meaning, the translation, and the purport, you get the fuller meaning of it. And that is on the body and the conclusion. The first two lines is the bare information, and the second two lines give you the fuller information. Therefore, that is very important to know. So when you're reading a sloka, you should really engage the translation, the word meaning, the purport, to get the full meaning of the sloka. It makes life so much easier. As I said to you, I wish I had known that 20 years ago. But there we are. Anything else? Yeah?
You were.
Okay.
So we will get a for Athi now. Thank you. And can you let me more space? Thank you. That's it.
Men who go behind of
Sri Panchatattva ki Jai Go Premanande. Say loudly please. Jai Go Premanande. Shiva Jayo Jaya Gaura Chande Arati Shobha Thank you. Radha His Divine Grace, Abhay Charnaravinda Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki जय ओम श्रीपाद परमहंस प्रकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्री भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती महाराज की नमाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की गौर कृष्णदास बाबा जी महाराज की स्वर्ग गोस्वामी प्रभु वृंद की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, मथुरा धाम की जय, द्वारकापुरी धाम की जय, श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम, मायापुर धाम की, पंढरपुर धाम की, श्री श्री विठ्ठल रुक्मिणी भगवान की, गंगा माया की, यमुना माया की, कावेरी नर्मदा सिंधु की, चंद्रभागा मैया की, वृंद देवी भक्त तुलसी महारानी की, all glories to the Supreme Lord. All glories to the Supreme Lord. All glories to the Supreme Lord. All glory, all glory, all glory. Guru and Gauranga Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, everyone be seated. We will have nothing now.
There will be a short kirtan by Madhavali Prabhu, and those of you who want to go downstairs for Prashadam, please proceed. Thanks for joining.